A renewed Commonwealth is a Commonwealth that is accountable back to its history of empire.
We can't change history, but how can we use the things that we did in the past and the things that we learned to create a better world for all of us?
Inclusion means being able to consider a person and their voice at all levels.
Inclusion also means ensuring that those who would otherwise be marginalized actually have access to their legal rights.
Justice means that all Commonwealth citizens live in countries where everyone is equal before the law.
We've inherited, unfortunately, some archaic colonial era laws that withhold justice for LGBT people, they withhold justice for women, withhold justice for people who practice different religious faiths. That's something that we have to look at and redress if we're to move forward.
Accountability means a process where citizens are empowered to understand the decisions governments are taking, to be part of the decision-making process.
Out of this CHOGM, I want the Commonwealth to be able to reduce socio-economic inequality of its citizens in any way possible.
I would love to see universal health coverage, that no one is excluded from health cover.
My message to the leaders of the Commonwealth would be that outside of these meetings, we need to more consistently harness our collective knowledge and build shared capacity.
There's 2.4 billion people alone in the Commonwealth, so I think together we can actually make a stand and actually move towards a better Commonwealth together.
You don't often get to be close to the people who are doing the similar kind of work that you are doing. And the importance of meeting those people is that you feel a sense of commonality and common purpose and connection that strengthens work that otherwise just feels intellectual and political.
So I feel privileged, I feel very happy to meet and interact with different peoples from the Commonwealth. I feel happy.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's day 3. There's a Darwinian feel about this. You know, by the time you get to day 3 of conferences like this, it really is the survival of the fittest. I really paid tribute to you for having the stamina to be with us throughout the 3 days. And we have had an intensive 3 days, intensive discussion, policy dialogue, perspectives, presentations of case studies, and knowledge sharing on inclusive governance for a renewed Commonwealth. The process of capturing information and developing outcome documents has been thorough and consistent with the consultative approach that we have always taken. First, as the nearly 30 sessions have proceeded, rapporteurs, and a big hand to the rapporteurs at this stage for being so diligent, and our session chairs have been working in capturing the richness and detail and indeed nuance of each session in real time. That's no mean feat. They have, one and all, done an outstanding job. My sincere appreciation to them for their extraordinary work. Secondly, session reports have been distilled and synthesized to produce 2 overall outcome documents. And I'll come to these in a moment. Thirdly, we've had a reference group at the Content Design Committee that was, of individuals drawn from across the civil society. These colleagues oversaw the process of synthesizing the final documents. Members of the group stood at the outset, so you knew who they were. I wonder how many of them are left in the room. Some of them had to leave early. If there are any members of the Content Design Committee, please stand now again so we can thank you properly for the work that you have done. Now, these colleagues have provided guidance and input on the content, ensuring that the sense of each session and the key issues that have emerged from those sessions have been captured, but captured in a reasonably concise and accessible format. So thanks are due to this reference group for all that support. And now the outcomes themselves. They've been contained in 2 documents. First, the London Declaration on Inclusive Governance for a Renewed Commonwealth. The declaration outlines in details your deliberations, observations, and findings. These that you have deliberated on and focused on over the past 3 days, across all the sessions and all the issues that you've covered. And second, drawn from that declaration, is a call to action by Commonwealth civil society, civil voices. This second, more concise call to action derives directly from the more detailed London Declaration, and we've distilled it from the most critical calls that you as civil society have made. And we're presenting these here for you this afternoon. What I want to make clear is that we are committed to making sure that we're consistent in the way in which we treat with this process. In Malta, those of you who were there, you'll recall that we didn't release to the public generally the statement until we had the approval of the delegates for the text. What we will do, and I'm asking for your trust here, is use the declaration as developed as the basis for the presentations to the foreign ministers and indeed heads of government tomorrow. We will email every delegate a copy of the text, and there will be a silence procedure. You will have 2 weeks to edit the declaration before we finalise it and release it as a public document. That's the process that we will use. I want to go on now and introduce the call to action. As Commonwealth Civil Society, you have met at the Commonwealth People's Forum 2018, CPF 2018, from the 16th to the 18th of April, reflecting on your work and experiences in Commonwealth countries and drawing on your deliberations at CPF 2018, including policy dialogues, plenary and panel sessions attended by more than 350 Commonwealth civil society participants. And today, this forum issues a call to action, inclusive governance for a renewed Commonwealth. There are 3 pillars to this framework. First, ending exclusion in the Commonwealth. Secondly, tackling injustice. And thirdly, committing to accountability. My colleagues will present the call to action. I thank you.
My country does not know love without being loved first. He is a man, and I will trace history, his story with my fingers. As he lies on his beaten back, starting with his figure, I will outline his borders, each nook and corner that divides him into his various states of being. Consciously unconscious, I will run my fingers through his balding forehead and down his forehead, counting each line of defense to the center point between his eye for detail and eye for curiosity. He envisions the future of a civilization right under his nose as he inhales influence and exhales modernity. His lips move to the rhythm of every national anthem barely sung before parting to my finger, touching the tip of his tongue, rolling out speeches that make other tongues wag. I trail down his ego-swollen chin and neck, pressing against a tiny birthmark underneath the left side of his ear, a symbol of his ancestral right to freedom, which he often takes for granted. So I caress away the sore muscles on both his arms from pumping morals and lifting the law to a struggling point of balance. I slide my fingers across his hands. He is mostly right wing, but sometimes left. But it won't matter. When our fingers intertwine, we will build bridges, linking the empty spaces and voids between barren lands and oasis. Interlocked with goodwill, we will form relations. With friends, a handshake, and foes, a pat on the back, keeping them both close while remaining far. And I will circle his scars that marks each battle he has won and lost through the ages, bruised shins from his every fall, scraped knees from when he used to crawl, and the boyish risks he took to fracture an economy, and the bullying that shaped his firm legs for greater strides forward, though he always takes 2 footsteps back. He is startled as my fingers cross his unmentionables, arousing his ambition which erects skyscrapers and nuclear facilities in the name of progress. I rest my fingers on his chest, slowly unraveling the flag that has clothed his masculinity for far too long. He roars, wanting more than before, so we start a revolution from our bed by tugging at the sheets, screaming declarations, shouting contestations. We protest harder and harder and harder till we finally come to a compromise. He trembles and we smile. Though we know it's a temporary win-win situation, we will hug and try over and over in anticipation, hoping that we never get it right, at least not the first 61 times. And like every man, my country needs a woman. Sometimes on top, sometimes behind, but always by his side, and together we will make love.
We must reimagine migration. Across the Commonwealth, we call for an end to the practices of indefinite detention of asylum seekers anywhere in the Commonwealth. There must be a maximum limit on the detention and no adults at risk detained. We call for better resourced local and municipal governments, providing migrants with expanded service provision programs, including integration in local communities.
They asked me if I had a gay poem, so I said, straight up no. My words don't deviate between straight lines. My poems don't mince their words or bend or make queer little observations. They asked me if I had a gay poem, so I answered honestly that no, I don't have any gay poetry. And even if unthinkably I did, what would that say about me? I mean, even presenting the question puts me in a precarious position. And how could I broach the subject with my own creation? Like, excuse me, poem, are you gay? Have you grown up contrarily to what I wanted you to say? I mean, I certainly did not write you that way. Was it something I said, something I did that turned you? Maybe I should have peppered your verses with sport, girls, and beer. Maybe as your author I deserted you. Or did another writer turn you queer? Okay, let's say hypothetically that this poem is gay. Maybe it's just a confused poem that needs straightening out. Maybe I could insert verses from Leviticus, speak over it in tongues, douse it in holy water, recite it the Quran, give it a beat, 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 boombox blasting in the street, butty poem for dead, rip up chichi poem and I shred. They asked me if I had a gay poem. And I answered no, but the truth is I didn't know until one of my very own poems stepped up and tapped me on the shoulder. It said, look here, Dad, author, I'm now that much bolder and I'm not confused, I'm not alternative, and even though the words I choose to marry with make me different, it don't make me any less eloquent. I don't need to be overly elegant, maybe that's why I stepped under your gaydar, but why are you so afraid to embrace it? Face it, it's just another part of me, you can't erase it. The more you try to label me with your twisted synonyms, the more you say you hate the sinner and despise the sin, the more you try to clip my words and stifle my expression, the more I know it's you, not me, whose morality should be called into question. They asked me to read out a poem. They said, choose one of your strongest, choose one of your best, choose a poem that don't stand for any foolishness. They asked me if I had a gay poem, so I proudly said yes. Thank you.
Reforming colonial-era laws. Civil society call on all Commonwealth governments to accelerate legislative reform that respects human rights and ensures access to mental health care, decriminalizes consensual same-sex relations by adults, ends impunity on gender-based violence, and removes other discriminating provisions.
Street after street, you see me dancing. Traffic lock is eye moving. But what is my beat? Tell me what is my beat? Locked there, you say, what's he dancing to? But I dance only to you. Whatever you play, what under you play. 'Cause I hear things in the sound clash of city. In this crazy polyphony, a single voice sings. A single voice sings. A sound that's not sound. Through my feet to my head, I shake out the dread. I dance the unsound. I dance the unsound. I dance the unsound. I dance to the unsound. I dance the unsound.
Accessing justice, particularly for persons with disabilities. Across the Commonwealth, we must establish policies in justice systems that afford reasonable accommodation to persons with disabilities, provide targeted fellowship and legal aid programs, and break down legal, financial, and institutional barriers that prevent access to justice.
My ear amps whistle like they are singing to echo. Goddess of noise, wailing for her return as a ravelled knot of tongues, of blaring birds, of consonant crumbs, of sounds swamped in my misty hearing aid tubes. Gaudi believed in holy sound and built a cathedral to contain it, pulling hearing men from their faded knees like deafness was a kind of atheism.
Who would turn down God? Even though I have not heard the golden decibel of angels.
I have been living in a noiseless palace where the doorbell is pulsating light.
And I am able to answer.
Rights of Indigenous peoples. Civil society calls for reinvigorated attention to the concerns of Indigenous peoples throughout the Commonwealth. We call for a new Commonwealth agenda that includes constitutional reform to recognize and correct historical injustice and exclusion, recognition of Indigenous peoples as citizens of their own nations, free to design and develop new approaches to self-determination, enforcement of the right to free, prior, and informed consent, implementation of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
It was empire that dismissed our worldviews as savage, unearthed us from our languages, replaced it with the tongues of trade. We found ourselves dictated to by a language that names all else as foreign, a mother tongue that beat itself into 1,000 tiny mouths with whips and straps and punishment. A language that names the world and knows it all. This language is all I have to offer you. Even as I speak through it, it shapes everything I can say. We have entered this forest, no stories to guide us that tell us where we are, no elder to interpret the language of birds, cloud, wind, insects. We have entered this forest and the only narratives we have inherited are theirs. Discoverers of countries, history begins when they arrive. Already the baddies, we are Indians, we are savages of the South Seas, inconvenient natives. In Australia, humans reimagined as flora and fauna living in our own lands. We are somehow in the way. And they are in the cowboy hats, captains of great ships, spinning silver pistols, the honour of armed forces, armadas, keeping everybody safe from us. We are all the ooga booga they can imagine. Unholy, heathen, dirty, brown-skinned, red-skinned, black-skinned, yellow-skinned. We are off-white in some way, and it will be a problem. Oh, we've entered this strange forest where we are not safe because of the colour of our skins and the dangers that lurk in the white of that darkness. We have entered this dark forest without knowing the names of the spirits that have always roamed these roads, and we are left with new names. Tina Fontaine murdered one of the many missing and murdered women, new spirits who watch over us in the birds. Not guilty say the same nameless, faceless people who have made nameless, faceless decisions that have resulted in death for decades, resulted in unjust justice for centuries. Not guilty, they say, and I say, what is it that you are not guilty of?
Climate justice. Commonwealth governments must address the inequitable burden placed on the most climate vulnerable countries and people. This includes a re-examination and review of the narrow framework of adaptation for international funding to the climate vulnerable communities. A conversation about reparative justice that recognizes the political and historical perspectives to the current climate vulnerabilities of countries and people. Prioritizing education about the impacts of climate change on the most climate vulnerable.
If we look in one drop of water from one drop of rain, it contains one drop of disorder that charts a planet's pain. If you can look within a single grain of sand, you'll see the quickening desert that expands. As it builds its own future plans, it extinguishes all the land. The greenhouse emissions form grim tales for predictions. The hills have their own eyes as they realize the futility of our position. There's a futility in our expense. There's a futility in our pollution. There's an instability in our conclusions that offers no improvement on solution. Can we have a single molecule of oxygen that's uncorrupted by the toxicants? Isn't that the building block of our children's stock to be able to breathe air freely and not be coughing up? Can we chart a solitary snowflake, cast its carbon foot on Swan Lake? Yet the warning of global warming is only courted when the storms break. We only take heed when the typhoons hit and the hurricanes blitz and the sea levels rise and fresh water runs dry. Amazon forests die and landfill sites pile sky high, yet somewhere amidst all the lies you can hear Mother Nature cry. Don't forget that this planet has its own biological clock. Nothing lasts forever, so don't demolish the lot. If life is indeed to be treasured, then let us treasure what we've got. Because remember that all life started from just one precious drop.
Of empire. I come to sing of sinking islands in the South Pacific, on the blue continent where I come from. What is at stake is the very land we stand on. The earth itself rejects us. It reneges its responsibilities. It has retreated back into the deep. And if the ocean could speak, in the choked, overheated throat, gagged with plastic bags, in the way she once spoke to us, and we could listen, she would say, too much salt on her tongue. She would say, rising with a surety that we have never seen before, she would say, enough.
I look out where the sea, not far now, sips the shoreline in. You like the still, stark beauty of this widening desolation. It lakes the empty roadways, buildings, dissolving the idea of progress. We lack all hope now. You tell us this cannot be contained. You lock your dams, dikes, doors in vain. The waters rise. They lick unhurriedly at the diminishing world, which they will swallow.
Just world order and just economies. Commonwealth civil society demand a shift toward a people-first economy that curbs the influence of international institutions, multinational corporations, and elites over governments and the media, provides an alternative to GDP and ensures measures inequality, and begins a conversation about an alternative to a growth-centered economic paradigm.
Digital age. Is it friend or foe? The digital age poses new and unresolved challenges in the quest to create just societies, both helping and hindering their creation. Civil society calls on all Commonwealth leaders to demand increased, transparent, and substantive accountability from digital technology platforms and providers. Develop and implement systems and processes to strengthen the protection of the human rights of minorities and other communities most vulnerable to the risks of digital technologies, such as big data, net neutrality, robotics, and artificial intelligence.
It is a system. Everywhere it is a system. It is cyclops stairs of hydra-headed vision screening you for entrance to the crypt. It is laminated faces. It is words in cellophane screening you for entrance to the crypt. It is assembly line of attitudes, emotions, lives. It is what we do not need. It cannot dream the juice of flowers into our lifeblood. It cannot cool the sky into our drinking cups. It cannot sustain the human exchange. It will not supply the human demand. It will never draw sea, rock, fruit, land, woman, man into a future original circle. It is un, de, less, mis, non, nultra. It disintegrates on contact with the final question. You are the final question.
Accountability in development. Complexity within the development and aid sector makes transparency and accountability to beneficiaries ever more important. We call on all Commonwealth countries to strengthen accountability in development regimes to include explicit, direct, and unambiguous agreement on principles, commitment, and standards of development cooperation. proactive, and consistent information sharing with the public, specifically with the people's representative upon demand. Strengthening of local partner capacities so that they can adequately monitor, participate, and hold partners to account.
Separation of powers. Across the Commonwealth, the separation of powers of Parliament and the judiciary must be enhanced. Civil society calls on governments to promote, utilize, and realize the Commonwealth Latimer House principles to ensure the financial and administrative independence of Parliament and the judiciary. Support judicial officers, particularly those in lower courts, vulnerable to threats from independence. Implement fair and impartial appointment processes for judicial officers and uphold and protect the freedom of expression for the media.
Success is the strut of a stiletto. Click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. When I was 8, Daddy took me to the shoe store, bought me my first pair of sport shoes, though I never played a sport. Life is a sport, kid. You gotta learn how to walk, how to run, how to jump, how to move. White canvas shoes will take you places, he said, heights that no other fingers could scrape. He forgot to tell me that we could not afford Nike. So Bata was the brand of the triumphant. Till I tripped on a step and fell down the ranks of an education system that set me up to fail from the start. Daddy decided that the victorious wore black court shoes. So I tried to be perfect till I saw the prefix, which became the pretext to my winning behavior. I need to win. Stick needles into my skin so my veins would understand that failure is not an option when you are a minority. 10 A1s are necessary. I learned to wear stilettos that pierce the earth to remind the soil of my presence. Because Daddy said, they will forget about me. Don't let them forget about you, he said, because you do not get what you deserve. You get what you are entitled to, and I have no titles to claim. Scholarships were my first love. Like a bad relationship, I went back to again and again and again. My first drag of a cigarette was rolled up application forms. Rejection was the amphetamine I got high on getting higher than the privileged person in the corner who says that pain is the success that I am addicted to. And they say success is the pain that I am addicted to. But really, I am just walking in my father's shoes.
People-centered health and education. Inclusive and people-centered education and health system are critical foundations for just, resilient, and sustainable Commonwealth societies. We call on government to reduce the cost of education and make health service accessible to everyone. Curb the privatization of healthcare provision and ensure healthcare systems put public care at the forefront.
Renewing the Commonwealth. We stand at the threshold of a new Commonwealth future, built on equality, diversity, a constant questioning and interrogation of the constraints and challenges that face us, and the opportunities, strength, and values that unite us as human beings with shared stories. We will achieve this through common effort, shared experience, action with vision and imagination, and by building inclusive, participative, and accountable systems of governance that will leave no one behind. I'd like to end this section with a poem that is dedicated to Martin Luther King, who was taken from us almost 50 years ago in this month. And before he died, he had a speech where he said he'd been to the mountaintop. And this poem is dedicated to that memory, and it's called Go Tell It on the Mountain. I caught the falling feather of an angel's wing, and I wanted it tattooed upon my spine. Now you can call me a devil or a demonic thing. Who cares for names if I can fly? Who cares for names if I can rise and claim what's rightfully mine, beyond the foot of this crooked mountain which casts a haze upon my life? You know it's impacting how I'm living. You know it's exact and unforgiving. It traps my soul within a box and it holds a lock to my upliftment. I just want to float away so high. I just want to break the color lines. I want to break the minimum wage and slavery, break the cannons, guns, and knives, that I can escape the prison time, escape the trips to courtroom trials, that I can rewind the school exclusions when daddy leaves and mommy cries. Am I wrong to want to escape this plight? These angel wings give me insight. They levitate my mental state to leave these shackles far behind, but fallen wings leave scattered feathers. And I tried my best to just collect them, but they were spread oh so far apart, to unite them all would take forever. So I gathered just what I could, looked to the stars from where I stood, that I could leave behind this mountain, behind this city, behind this hood, behind this street, behind this road, behind this past that leaves me cold. I'll fly so high they'll never find me, I'll never go back to the days of old. But as I flap and flap and flap, there are no wings upon my back. There is no magical elevation, and my puppet strings are still attached. I raise my eyes up to the sky. I look way beyond this mountain high. I look to the heavens and just ask why this world won't get off my back and let me fly. But I'm stuck at the bottom of my regrets, with that single feather that I now possess. One day we'll reach that mountaintop, but we'll have to do it step by step. Thank you.
Well, that's it. As they say, colleagues, it's time to roll the credits. You know, the Commonwealth Foundation is a modest organisation, small but ambitious. We couldn't put on this kind of amazing project without the collaboration of several sets of people. And what I want to do now is just shout out, I think, Mr. G, the phrase is, that's right, shout out to the people that have helped make it happen. I mean, Commonwealth Foundation staff have done much of the heavy lifting. There's been a gestation period of about a year and a half worth of effort and thinking, conceptualization, organization, planning to make this happen. Two of our colleagues have taken the phrase gestation period seriously, and Mythica and Liliana, I'm not sure, are here, but are enjoying maternity leave elsewhere. Comfort for her work on delegate-led sessions, Gillian for the work on learning and communications, Janet for the work on staging, Raniera for the program architecture. Those colleagues have done amazing work in making this happen. All foundation staff have lived, eaten and breathed Commonwealth People's Forum for at least the past 3 or 4 months, including interns and volunteers. But this story of the Foundation's effort and investment in the People's Forum would not be complete without proper tribute being paid to Min Garcia, the Deputy Director General of the Commonwealth Foundation. I've thought long and hard about the metaphors and similes and all sorts of things that I could use to summarize Min's contribution to the People's Forum, but words fail me. I'm not a poet, colleagues. You know, You know, I had a boss once, and people used to say about me, I had a very close working relationship with her, and people used to say to me that I was her right hand. And I always took it as a compliment until one day I realized that she was left-handed. That also tells you that I've only got half a brain. So if I'm a right brain person, Min is my left brain. And together, I hope you'll agree, we've put on a half-decent show. Our speakers, chairs, rapporteurs, our poets, the incomparable Mr. G. Thank you for really bringing this whole event to life, to breathing life into it. I confess, these events have been dry by comparison in previous years. This has been of a different scale and a different nature. We're grateful to you for that. I mentioned the collaborative nature of the People's Forum, and anywhere we go, we're reliant on the host government, or as we've come to lovingly refer to them in the Commonwealth Foundation as HMG, Her Majesty's Government. HMG, FCO, CSU, these are these guys live, eat and breathe this spaghetti soup of organisations. Within Her Majesty's Government, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, within the Foreign Commonwealth Office, our colleagues at the Commonwealth Summit Unit. I can see Alex Partridge has just snuck in at the back there. Alex, thank you very much. Please convey our heartfelt thanks to our host government. Salma Siddiqui. Salma, is Salma in the audience? Salma? Salma, thank you. Our liaison person for the forum. Siobhan and Glasgow's colleagues hiding behind that smoke glass, thank you very much for miking us up, making it happen. Awesome. And Mike Freeman. That video that you saw before we came on was produced in the space of about 12 hours. It's a remarkable piece of work. Mike, thank you very much for putting in the hard yards. We've, in addition, assembled a specific CPF team, a Commonwealth People's Forum team, project managed by Shoba Das. Shoba, are you here? Menji, where are you? Lucy Hannah, Creative Vision. Lindy, Production. And I know she's going to get a special shout out here. Steph, Finance. CHOGM Liaison, Tamara, thank you very much. And our Duracell bunny, Cyrus Rustamji, our rapporteur, who was not only survived on probably less than 2 hours sleep for the past 4 days, but is also running the London Marathon on Sunday. The least we can do is seek out your donations page and sponsor you for that event, Cyrus. Thank you very much. So, you know when they run the credits, right, and you're about to leave the cinema, sometimes there's a little reprise. Oh, no, they're going to show us what's going to happen next. And you have to get back into your seat and find out that little snippet about the next film that's coming up and going to be released in 6 months' time. I've been asked to do one last thing, and that is to pay tribute to one of our heroes. Of course, this is an opportunity to celebrate a successful Commonwealth People's Forum, yes, but also it's important that we take note and remember and recognise the person whose idea this all was in the first place. Do you remember 1991? Desert Storm? Rodney King? No World Wide Web? No Starbucks? That was a year when a group of civil society activists, mainly women from the Caribbean, they came up with the idea of engaging with Commonwealth heads of government, which that year was meeting in Harare. They scored an immediate hit. The Harare Declaration, which provided the basis for what we now know as the Commonwealth Charter, made one of the first ever references to what we then referred to as non-governmental organisations in a Commonwealth document. And the leading light in that movement is Hazel Brown, and she's sat in the front row. Now, Hazel has been to every one of the 13 occasions on which civil society has camped on the doorstep of Commonwealth heads of government over the past 27 years. She's an icon in her own Trinidad and Tobago, where she's affectionately known by those who know her simply as Brown. With more than 40 years of activism in pursuit of gender equality, Hazel understood the importance of civil society engagement with institutions very early on, not just at home, but globally, whether it was in Harare or Beijing or New York. Hazel had the audacity to imagine that Commonwealth heads of government should engage with civil society. That was what was behind her idea to take that group of civil society activists to Harare. And every CHOGM since, civil society, alongside the Commonwealth Foundation, has edged a little closer, never managing to storm the citadel, but gradually encroaching, often being repelled. In 2005, we secured a substantive dialogue between CPF delegates and Commonwealth foreign ministers. But there was always a sense that we were being kept at the gate. This year, I was able to write to Hazel and tell her that for the first time ever, a small group of civil society colleagues would be able to get in front of Commonwealth heads. This was the reply I received to that email. Wow, now I can die and go to heaven. It's no exaggeration to say that this has been Hazel's life work. She says this will definitely be her last Commonwealth People's Forum. She's been honoured by our own University of the West Indies with an honorary doctorate. She's been awarded Trinidad and Tobago's Gold Medal for the development of women. Colleagues, can we honour Hazel Brown in our own way? Hazel, please join me on the stage.
I'm a failed politician, but I'm not a crying person. Otherwise, I would cry. And it is true, I can now die and go to heaven. Because I have to tell, my story says in 1991, when the Commonwealth government, in fact in 1989 when they agreed that they would meet with us, here how we met. We had to go to Harare 2 weeks before the heads got there and have our forum and our workshops and get out of there before the heads actually arrived in town. And over the years, as Vijay said, we've worked to enlarge that space and make it more useful and helpful to Commonwealth people. And well, a couple of landmarks, as Vijay said, the foreign ministers' dialogue, which was supposed to be a compromise. They would say, well, you can't meet with the heads, but we'll let you meet the foreign ministers. And we made that work to the extent that this year, for the first time, except for the Youth Forum, we will have the opportunity of meeting face to face with those people who rule us. So I have enjoyed this one because, like I said, we're going to have breakfast with them tomorrow morning. And hopefully the call for action that we've just seen here will impress them. I hope they get it presented, Vijay, in a creative form and not just the words on the pieces of paper, because I believe that is how we should do it. But I want to thank the foundation. Of course, I've been a pain in their side, as you can well imagine. But this is my last one, because I want young people to take over this space. This space was hard-won. It didn't just happen. It didn't just happen. It was won for you. We hand it over to you. Take care of it. Take care of it.